Hey there, everyone. This is Eric Archer from TI, and today we're going to go over the cell cycle and mitosis. It's an interesting topic. Did you know that you are a product of mitosis? So your hair, your skin, fingernails are constantly being regenerated at a fairly rapid rate. And in fact, the outer layer of your skin will be all new in just about 3 weeks from now. So in 3 weeks from now, you're going to have a whole new set of skin, hair, nails, the whole 9 yards. But what's not true is that all of your cells do that. So some of your cells reproduce more quickly than others, and so some of your cells take a much longer time to reproduce. So the lifespan of your red blood cells is only about 120 days, while the cells of your liver take up to about a year to reproduce, which is pretty remarkable. And what's interesting is during the cell cycle, the process of regeneration of the cell and making new cells, uh, there are two main segments. So interphase, which we'll talk a lot about in this lesson, and then mitosis, which we'll also spend some time on. Most of the cell's existence is spent in interphase. That's when the cell's growing, it's doing its job, whatever those jobs may be. Um, Interphase is split up into three components: growth 1, synthesis of DNA, and then growth 2, which we'll talk about here in a little while. We've got a nice simulation that shows some of these processes as well. And the process of mitosis, it's used for several reasons, but essentially what the body's trying to do is either grow and or repair damaged cells. And so your body's constantly doing this. It's constantly making new cells to replace older or damaged cells. So today we get to talk about cell cycle, mitosis, and it's all about you. Before we get started, I need to remind you that you can follow along this activity. You can follow along the video by going to the TI website at www.education.ti.com, downloading the TI-Nspire CX Premium software, and then also going to our content site at www.scienceinspired.com to download this file. The name of this file that we're using today is Addition by Division. So it's just kind of a funny title that talks about how we're adding new cells by dividing the dividing the current cells in half. So going to be a good lesson today. It should take about 20, maybe 25 minutes. We'll see. So hope you're ready, and let's get started. All right. So I have the file Addition by Division pulled up in the TI-CX Premium software in my Documents tab. To pull an activity into your computer, you can go to your desktop, pull it off your desktop, and open it up from there. I've got a bunch of activities there. But once it's open, it'll be opened up in your Documents tab. And so let's go ahead and get started on this one. Page 1.2, the cell cycle consists of two main segments, interphase and mitosis. Most of the cell's existence is spent in interphase. Remember that G1, S, and G2 phase, the growth phases. That's when the cell's doing its job. It's also growing and reproducing a copy of DNA in preparation for mitosis. Mitosis is the process of cell division. When one cell replicates its DNA in other cell parts, it then divides into two identical cells. So they're genetically identical. They're the same chromosomes, copies of the same chromosomes. Process of mitosis, it takes about the same amount of time, whatever the cell type is, skin cell, liver cell, kidney cells. The mitosis portion takes about the same amount of time. And that's usually about 24 hours to do a complete, go through the complete mitotic cycle, which is pretty cool. So just about any cell in your body, it's going to go through this about the same time. Whereas during interphase, that's where it's different from cell type to cell type. And so we're going to explore some of this here in a few minutes. Jumping over to page 1.3, the next two pages show pie charts of cell cycles of two different kinds of cells, kidney cells and skin cells. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at both. And what we'll do is we're going to spend time on mitosis and interphase, but the lesson's really split into two parts. So the first part, we're going to look at how much time do two different types of cells spend in mitosis versus interphase. And then the second part, we're going to spend a little more time on mitosis itself. So looking at the various stages of mitosis as the cells basically splitting into two identical daughter cells. All right, so the first cell type we're going to look at is kidney cell type. Now this is not a picture of the kidney cell, obviously. This is just a pie chart. But the pie chart, what it's doing is it's describing how many cells are in various stages. So we did a cell count and of a kidney cell tissue sample, and 225 of those cells in the cell sample were in interphase, whereas 10 were in prophase, 6 were in metaphase, 4 were in anaphase, and 5 were in telophase. So what does this mean? Basically what this tells us is that out of a large sample size, 225 plus 10, 6, let's see, 225, that's 235, 231, 235, and 240. So out of 240 cells that we took a look at, what it tells us is that the vast majority of them were in interphase, which means it's reasonable to conclude that the majority of the cells spend most of their time in interphase and only a little bit of time in mitosis. And so this is also, from a time point of view, we can estimate, if we know that each cell type takes about 24 hours to go through mitosis, then we can sort of extrapolate how much time these cells are also in interphase. So it gives us an option to, have an idea of how long a kidney cell exists before it goes into mitosis. And then I'm going to jump to the next slide. This is a skin cell pie chart. Same kind of idea. We counted a number of cells that were skin cells, a smaller sample size in this case, but 35 cells were in interphase, 10 were in prophase, 6 were in metaphase, 4 were in anaphase, and 5 were in telophase. So, we're looking at, let's see, 35 plus 10 is 45, plus 6 is 51, plus 4 is 55, plus 5 is 60. So out of 60 cells, 60 skin cells, 35 of those were in interphase, whereas the other 25 were in metaphase. So that's proportional to how long skin cells last before they're reproducing into new skin cells. So between the two pie charts, knowing that mitosis takes about 24 hours for each skin cell type, then it tells you, we can ask questions like which of these cell types spends most of their time in interphase. And so in fact, we do have some questions for you to take a look at and think. So the question asks, if the mitosis portion of the cell cycle lasts for 24 hours in both kidney and skin cells, estimate how long interphase lasts in each cell. So if you want, you can pause the video here and sort of take a stab at finding the answers out. Otherwise, I'm going to keep rolling and talk through how we might figure this out. And so if I jump back over to the kidney cell on page 1.4, you got a couple of different ways to do this. You can sort of eyeball it and estimate, and we'll start with that. And we can see that 90% of the cells were in interphase, whereas about 10%, obviously 10% would be the difference, were spent in mitosis. So if we use those numbers and think about time, and we know that mitosis takes 24 hours, we can say that, well, if 10% of the cell cycle took 24 hours, then we know that the entire cell cycle must have taken about 240 hours. And so we can, very quickly calculate, looks like I got some old numbers here. We can very quickly calculate what we're the total time for the cell cycle by just saying, okay, well, 240 hours divided by there are 24 hours in a day, so we're looking at about 10 days. And the question's asking about interphase specifically. Well, we know that 240 is the total of interphase and mitosis. So if we take out the mitosis portion, we're looking at 216 hours. And if we divide 216 hours by 24 hours in a day, looking at about 9 days the cell was in interphase. So you don't need to do the calculations depending on what your teacher wants you to do, but this is one way to sort of figure it out very quickly, especially if the numbers are nice, like 10% and 90%. So so the kidney cell takes about 10 days to reproduce, to become a new, to make 2 new daughter kidney cells. So let's jump back over to the skin cell now. So the skin cell, we know because mitosis consumes much more of this pie graph. Looks like interphase is at 58%. So that must mean, I'm just rounding down, 58%. So that must mean that the mitotic portion, the mitosis portion, is the difference between 100 and 58. So we're looking at about 42% of the time must be spent in some various form of mitosis. And of course, you can break this down by each stage of mitosis and figure out how many hours each of these different phases of mitosis, how many hours it takes for each. But you can do that on your own. I won't spend any time doing that here. But what it will do is show you maybe a more precise way to figure out how much time the skin cell was spending in interphase. So we know that 58%, and again, I'm not doing the 0.3. We could if we wanted to, but we'll just round. These are all estimates anyway. 24 hours is an estimate for mitosis, so it gives you sort of a ballpark. But if I know that 58% of the time is spent in interphase and 42% of the time is spent in mitosis, you know, I can go back to my calculator here, and we can pull up that calculator screen again, and then we can say, okay, well, I know that if 24 hours takes us about 0.42, which is 42%, which gives us 57 is sort of a ratio, then I know I can take that 57 and multiply it times 0.58, I believe it was, which will give us 33 hours. And so that's one way to do it, since this is a proportion, meaning that 24, we know that 24 hours takes 42% of the time. We also know that x over 50.58% would be what we were trying to solve for x. That would be proportional to 24 over 0.42. Turns out that 33 is the answer. 33 hours is what's spent in interphase. So that's sort of a calculator way to do it. You can also just kind of eyeball it and take your best guess, but check with your teacher on what your teacher wants for that, just to make sure. All right. So you know what, let's go ahead and look at another question anyway. Let's look at question 2. Estimate how long each of the 4 mitotic phases, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, lasts in skin cell mitosis. You know, we've got some information here. Again, you can pause the video if you want to figure these out yourself. Prophase is 16.7% of the overall cell cycle in skin cells. Metaphase is 10%. Anaphase is 6.7%, and telophase is 8.3%. So what you need to do is set it up like a proportion that we did before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the calculator again, and we knew that 33 hours was how long the skin cell spent in interphase. We know the mitosis portion, which is 24 hours, gives us a total time of about 57 hours for skin cells from all the way through interphase and all the way through mitosis. So now what I need to do, well, unfortunately I don't remember what the numbers were, so I need to go back here. So for prophase, we said 16.7% of the time the cell is in prophase for skin cells. Then it's, that's, we just need to relate that back to the number of hours. So 57 hours total. All we need to do now is say 57 times 0.167. Remember, since it's a percentage, we've got to move that decimal to the left twice. And what that'll do is that'll give us an answer of 9 hours, about 9.5 hours. You could round up to 10 if you wanted to. The next one was even easier. Metaphase, it was 10% of the time, so that's just times 0.1. And of course, it's going to be about 5.7 hours. You can round up to 6 hours. And then the next one was anaphase, and I already forgot, so I need to go back. Sorry. Anaphase was 6.7%. Telophase is 8.3. So 6.7, 8.3. 57 times 0.067 is about 3.8 hours, which would be, that's about 4 hours. And last but not least is the telophase stage, which was 8.3, I believe, so 0.083, which would be 4.7 hours, and we're going to go ahead and call that, we're going to round that up to 5 hours. So there's a way to figure that out. You can figure that out. Yeah, it was 8.3%. So you can figure that out with the proportions and just doing the calculations like I did it there for you. It's really up to you. So so we've answered several questions now on the different parts of mitosis and how long they last in the skin cells. Same question applies to the kidney cell, and the same thing. It's, if you know the total time, we said it was 240 total hours for both interphase and mitosis. Well, then it's just, knocking out some calculations here: 4%, 2.4%, 1.6, and 2. For those, I'm going to let you do those for that question on your own, since you know how to do it now. And next question is: estimate the length of one entire cell cycle and each of the cells that was modeled. And we've kind of already answered that. We saw in our calculations that the kidney cell, when you take 9 days of interphase plus 1 day of mitosis, then you get 10 total days for the entire cell cycle in a kidney cell, versus skin cells, we said about 57 hours. 24 hours of mitosis, 33 hours of interphase. So, all right, so there you go. Hopefully that made sense. And you can download a lot of these materials off the TI-Nspire.com website. The teacher documents have some sample answers if you're looking for some additional help, so that's a possibility for you. All right, another question here: which of the two types of cells, kidney or skin, divides more often? How do you determine this? Why do you think this is so? So you can pause it here, think through this a little bit, and then start the video back up, but I'm going to keep going. So between the two cells, we already saw that the kidney cell divides every 10 days, whereas, or I guess every 9 days, whereas the skin cell divides every, starts to divide every 33 hours. It goes through the full cycle every 57 hours, so, a little over about a day and a half. And so, but why? Why the difference? And, if you think about it, your skin is constantly having to regenerate. You probably, you bathe, and when you bathe, you're washing some of the dead skin off. Your skin's constantly replacing skin. If you have ever been out in the sun for too long and your skin begins to peel, it has to be replaced. And so the skin cells have to divide more quickly to be replaced more quickly, whereas the kidney cells, that's not the case. Okay? All right, question 7. When during a human's lifetime would you expect to find lots and lots of cells undergoing mitosis? When would you expect to find fewer? And then, why? So again, you can pause the video here and think about this. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. So if you think about, we start off as, basically we started off as a fertilized egg, and we quickly grow into a full-grown human. So the time you need mitosis most quickly is when you're growing most quickly, and that's usually when you're a baby, and before that even when you're basically a fetus. And so developing fetus, when you're an infant, your growth spurt years where you get bigger in your early teenage years. Whereas once you get to middle age, which is where I am, unfortunately, you don't need to reproduce cells as quickly. Really, you're just maintaining and replacing dead or dying cells. Question 8. The process of mitosis produces new body cells for you. What are 2 reasons why your body needs to produce new cells? I think we've covered this pretty well. Basically, growth, repair, and replacing dead cells. All right, this next question's it's a little heavy, so bear with me, but it's applicable to the real world here, because chances are most of us know someone who's been dealing with cancer. It could be a family member, friend of the family. But chemotherapy is a treatment for cancer. Cancer cells typically have a short cell cycle, and the chemotherapy drugs, they often attack the non-cancerous cells that also have short cell cycles. So this is called basically a side effect. And side effects of chemotherapy, if you think about what those are, you may be familiar with them. Usually it's like loss of hair and nausea. And so when you're not feeling well and you're sick to your stomach. And so based on what you know about the cell cycle, what would cause these side effects? Again, pause the video if you want to think about this a little bit. And otherwise, the basic answer is chemotherapy drugs attack cells that divide quickly. And so that happens to also include basically your hair cells. So that's why a lot of folks, their hair will fall out during chemotherapy, and also cells of the digestive lining, so your gut, and so that explains some of the not feeling well, sick to your stomach, nausea. That's why that's happening. And then in addition, anemia can also result in chemotherapy. As a result of chemotherapy, rather, because red blood cells also have a pretty quick reproductive cell cycle. All right, I think it's time to move on to the next portion of the video, 2.1. And so this gives you a scenario here about a student looking at an onion root tip under a microscope. Onion root tips are typically used to look at mitosis and interphase. Just because they're very easy to see under a microscope. You can actually see prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase very easily. These cells are typically dyed, and so you can see the chromosomes pretty easily. So anyway, the student entered those cell numbers into a spreadsheet and then generated a pie chart representing the relative time that an onion root tip cell spent in each phase. Look at the next page to see her results. So let's go take a look. Another one of those pie charts. This time we're talking about onion root cells, and so the counts were not too dissimilar from what we've seen before. You got a bunch of cells in interphase, many less in prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask you to pause the video. I'm going to put up a screen of an assignment I'd like you to do, and basically what I want you to do is if you're working from home, go ahead and do an internet search on onion root tip images, a web search for that, and blow up one of those images, and then I want you to count all of the cells, and I want you to count the number of interphase cells, come into this spreadsheet and enter that number. So let's say it's 120, and watch the pie chart so it changes. and prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So go ahead and pause the video. Go ahead and do that. Come back to the video when you're ready. And then, if you're using the software, you can use your own spread. You can use a spreadsheet that I'm using and enter your numbers. If you're not using the software, then really all you need to do is just do a total count and then divide each of these sub sections by the total count. So for example, if we had, I'm going to change that back to 100, 100 plus 10 is 110, plus 6 is 116, plus 4 120, plus 5 125. So what you would do is take 10 divided by 125, and that would be your percentage of cells in prophase. 6 divided by 125 would be your percentage of cells in metaphase, and so on. And then that way you can figure out how long each of these cells is spent in each of these phases. Okay? All right, so go ahead and get going on that, and then come back to the video and just restart it when you're ready. All right. Okay, so for me, I'm going to keep rolling here, and hopefully you're back from the break. Wasn't much of a break. I gave you an assignment, actually. So next page is 2.3. Do the actual cell counts, enter your values, watch a pie chart adjust as you enter your numbers. The entire cell cycle on onion root tip cell lasts for about 24 hours. So based on your cell counts, how long does the entire process of mitosis last? How long does each of the 5 phases of the entire cell last? And your answers are going to vary, but you understand now how to do the calculation. So we were talking about mitosis in humans before. It lasted 24 hours. In the onion root tip cells, the entire cell cycle lasts for about a day, lasts about 24 hours. So you know that the mitosis section is going to be happening more quickly than it was in humans. Okay, page 3.1. Again, we're looking at interphase. We're going to run a little simulation here of the cell cycle. So we started off in interphase G2, G2 to prophase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and then G1. And so the difference between G1 and G2 is that G1 is sort of the, let me see if I can catch it here. G1 are the daughter cells of cell division. These are the brand new cells, and they grow, they get a little bit bigger, and then they'll go into another phase called S phase, which isn't in the simulation, but that's where DNA is being synthesized, being replicated, which takes you into the G2 phase. So you have, it's a bigger cell. You've got double the amount of DNA in the nucleus, and then that prepares the cell for mitosis, so the cell can become 2 new complete cells. Okay. Now, based on the simulation, there's a series of questions here. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll go through a few. So page 3.3, what evidence can you see that the cell in the simulation is an animal cell? Well, we know there are, it's round, so it implies that there's a cell membrane instead of a cell wall. There are also centrioles that are present, and so that kind of is an indicator. 3.4, during which phase does the nuclear membrane disappear? And we know that that's prophase, is when that disappears, so then the cell can migrate those chromosomes, or before that they're called chromatids because they're still attached, the copies are attached to one another. 3.5, in the cell shown, how many pairs of chromosomes are present? So in the cell shown, we actually have these are replicate chromosomes, they're chromatids, but there's actually just one pair of chromosomes. This is a chromosome, that's a chromosome, and we've got one pair of chromosomes. So the answer is 1. Page 3.6, what is the fibrous network called that is visible in the cell from the prophase or anaphase portions of mitosis, and that's known as the spindle apparatus. It would be this choice here. Page 3.7, during which phase do the chromatids separate from one another? And so metaphase is when everything gets lined up in the middle, if you remember. Anaphase is when they get pulled apart, so that's when the separation starts to happen. Telophase, basically, all the membrane, the nuclei have formed. It's getting ready to go through cytokinesis, which is the splitting of the cell membrane. So it forms 2 new cells. Page 3.8, at the end of the process shown, how many chromosomes are shown as present in each of the new cells? And so the answer here would be, one complete set of chromosomes. So two, one from mom, one from dad. Don't forget, we're diploid organisms. And then I think this is the last one. If you've been watching a simulation of a human cell undergoing mitosis, how many chromosomes would have been present in each new cell? And so remember, humans have 23 pairs, 23 pairs of chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. So the total number of chromosomes would be 46. Okay, so that's the end of this activity. Remember, you can download that on www.TI-Nspire.com. You can get the software from education.ti.com, and hope you enjoyed this lesson, and check back on this YouTube channel for more. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.